Wolfenstein, Youngblood. It's a bold step into a new chapter, where you step into the boots of Jess and Soph Blazkowicz, twin daughters of the legendary B.J. Blazkowicz, as they carve their own bloody path through a Nazi-controlled Paris in the 1980s. The heart of the game lies in its co-op mechanics. It's built for teamwork, and the dynamic between the two sisters translates seamlessly into gameplay. Whether you're playing with a friend or teaming up with an AI partner, every encounter feels like a high-energy tag team of destruction. Coordinating attacks, sharing resources, and revving each other up with pep signals makes every fight feel alive and engaging. The gunplay is classic Wolfenstein, fast, punchy, and packed with variety. From the satisfying kick of a shotgun to the futuristic zap of a laser gun, there's a weapon for every playstyle. Upgrading your arsenal adds a layer of customization that lets you tailor your tools of destruction to your liking. It's not just about shooting, it's about shooting with style, precision, and that signature over-the-top flair. The structure of the game feels different in the best way possible. It's more open-ended, encouraging exploration, and giving you the freedom to tackle objectives in your own order. Paris isn't just a backdrop. It's a sprawling playground filled with hidden paths, enemy outposts, and countless opportunities to experiment with your approach. It's all about finding your rhythm, whether you're charging in guns blazing or sneaking around. Mad Max. So, I recently had the chance to spend some time with Mad Max, and let me tell you, it's an experience that truly stands out. The game captures the raw, gritty essence of the Mad Max universe so well that it feels like you're right in the heart of that post-apocalyptic wasteland. One of the first things that hit me was the attention to detail in the environment. The desolate landscapes and towering sandstorms are crafted with such precision that they almost feel alive. It's like every corner of the world has a story to tell, and exploring it becomes an adventure in itself. Upgrading and customizing your car, the magnum opus, is an absolute blast. There's something incredibly satisfying about tearing through enemies with a fully upgraded, heavily armed vehicle. And the thrill of high-speed chases and explosive battles really keeps you on the edge of your seat. The narrative is another strong point. Max's journey, filled with intense personal struggles and high-stakes encounters, is engaging from start to finish. It's not just about surviving, it's about finding purpose in a world that's gone mad. The characters you meet along the way, each with their own quirks and backstories, add depth to the story. What's more, the game does a great job of balancing action with exploration. There's always something to discover, whether it's hidden loot, side quests, or just interesting details in the environment. It encourages you to take your time and really soak in the world around you. The combat mechanics are solid. A Plague Tale Requiem. It absolutely should have been in the running for Game of the Year, but didn't quite get the recognition it deserved. This sequel took everything great about A Plague Tale: Innocence and cranked it up to a whole new level. The story, the characters, the visuals, it was all so much more intense. And honestly, it hit harder than a lot of people expected. First off, the story in Requiem was a gut punch in the best way. Following Amisha and Hugo's journey through a world ravaged by the plague and the supernatural rat infestation, you could feel the stakes growing as you progressed. What really stood out was the emotional weight of the game. It wasn't just about survival. It was about family, loss, and the lengths you'd go to protect the ones you love. The character development for both Amisha and Hugo was top tier, and by the end, it was impossible not to be emotionally invested in their fate. The game also looked absolutely stunning. The environments were jaw-dropping, whether you were sneaking through crumbling ruins, lush countrysides, or the plague-infested streets. The attention to detail made the world feel alive. Well, as alive as a world overrun by millions of rats can feel. And speaking of the rats, Requiem took the swarming rat mechanic from the first game and made it even crazier. The way they used light and shadow to control and avoid the rats created some of the most tense, nail-biting moments in the game. Another thing to consider is that Requiem came out in 2022, which was a year dominated by games like Elden Ring and God of War Ragnarok. Helldivers 2. Now, this game is a follow-up to the original Helldivers, which had a strong cult following. It's all about cooperative, top-down, tactical shooting, but with a pretty unique twist. It's brutally difficult. However, Helldivers 2 has gotten some hate for being too punishing, or for having gameplay mechanics that can feel overwhelming, especially for new players. One of the biggest complaints is how unforgiving it can be. Friendly fire is always on, which means you can accidentally or not so accidentally kill your teammates during missions. And believe me, this happens a lot. It's a game that forces you to be super careful, and not everyone is down for that level of intensity. The steep learning curve and lack of hand-holding also rubbed some players the wrong way, especially those who were expecting something more casual. Another thing that got some pushback was the game's structure. Missions can feel repetitive after a while, and if you're playing solo, the game is an entirely different experience, and not always in a good way. It's built around cooperative play, so going in alone can make it feel more frustrating than fun. But here's the thing. If you're into tactical shooters and have a squad to play with, Helldivers 2 is an absolute blast. The chaos that comes from trying to coordinate with your teammates while dodging enemy fire and calling in reinforcements makes for some seriously intense moments. The variety of weapons, gear, and strategies you can use makes each mission feel dynamic, and the constant threat of messing up keeps the tension high. Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition. This game is seriously underrated and deserves way more love. Imagine an open-world action game set in the bustling streets of Hong Kong, where you play as an undercover cop tangled up in the city's dangerous criminal underworld. It's like GTA, but with a unique twist that really sets it apart. And let's not forget the driving. Sleeping Dogs has some of the most fun driving mechanics out there. It's super arcadey, and you can do crazy stunts, hijack cars on the go, and even ram other cars off the road. There's something so satisfying about zooming through the city, dodging traffic, and knowing you can hop out at any time to start a fistfight. The city is alive with neon lights, crowded markets, and tons of little side activities that make it feel so authentic. You can go sing karaoke. Yes, karaoke. Try your luck at street races, or just cruise around and soak in the atmosphere. The developers did a fantastic job capturing the vibe of Hong Kong, and it's a city you actually want to explore. One of the best parts of Sleeping Dogs is the hand-to-hand combat. It's like a martial arts movie come to life. You're throwing punches, countering moves, and using your environment in the coolest ways. You can slam enemies into fish tanks, toss them off balconies, and even use random objects around you to gain the upper hand. So, if you're into action games with a great story and a city that feels alive and vibrant, Sleeping Dogs Definitive Edition is absolutely worth checking out. Next we have Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. This game is like every Star Wars fan's dream come to life. Seriously, if you've ever imagined wielding a lightsaber, dodging blaster shots, or facing off against terrifying Sith enemies, Fallen Order is the game for you. It just pulls you in and makes you feel like a Jedi in training, and it's just so much fun. This game takes you all over the Star Wars galaxy, from lush forests to crumbling ancient ruins and everything in between. Each planet has its own feel, its own mysteries, and its own set of enemies and challenges. There's this amazing sense of adventure as you move from planet to planet, uncovering secrets, exploring caves, and finding new paths. And the level design is a blast. It's got that classic Metroidvania vibe, where you keep discovering new abilities that let you access areas you couldn't reach before. You're constantly rewarded for exploring and backtracking, which just makes the whole journey so satisfying. Swinging a lightsaber in Fallen Order feels right. There's a weight to it, and when you deflect a blaster bolt back at a stormtrooper, pure joy. The combat strikes this perfect balance between fun and challenging. It's not button mashing. You actually have to time your attacks, parries, and dodges to succeed, which makes every encounter feel intense and meaningful. Plus, as you go along, you get to customize your lightsaber. You can pick different colors, hilts, and other parts to make it feel like your weapon, which is just such a cool touch. Fallen Order has an incredible story. Alien Isolation. I don't think I've ever played a game that kept me on the edge of my seat like this one did. You know how some horror games throw constant jump scares at you? Not here. This one's all about that slow building tension. You're literally never safe. It captures that feeling of dread from the original Alien movie perfectly. And let me tell you, the atmosphere in this game is top tier. The space station is so incredibly detailed, like straight out of the 1970s vision of the future. It has that grimy, lived-in feel, which just adds to how isolated you feel. The lighting is phenomenal too. I remember creeping through these dimly lit corridors with shadows dancing everywhere. The vibe is so good, you just feel like you're there. And that's half the reason this game works so well. It makes you feel like you're in constant danger. I think one of the coolest things is that the xenomorph isn't the only thing you have to worry about. There's other stuff happening on the station, and it really creates this sense that the world is alive. Well, maybe not alive, but dangerous. I won't spoil anything, but let's just say, some of the other encounters are almost as tense as dealing with the alien itself. Alien isolation isn't for everyone. If you don't like slower-paced games or being super stressed the whole time, maybe it's not your thing. But if you're someone who loves a good atmospheric challenge, and you appreciate a game that doesn't treat you like a kid, you're in for a treat. There's something incredibly satisfying about surviving an encounter with the alien. Final Fantasy XVI. I wasn't sure what to expect going in because the series has gone through so many different styles, but this one really grabbed me right away. First off, the story got this darker, more mature vibe compared to some of the other Final Fantasy games. I love how it dives deep into political drama, with all these nations fighting over the power of the Icons. It feels like you're watching this epic medieval fantasy unfold. And speaking of Iconso, man, those battles are insane. You've got these massive cinematic showdowns between these godlike creatures. The scale of it all is just jaw-dropping. Plus, the real-time combat system. It's smooth, it's fast, and it's so satisfying when you pull off these combos and juggle enemies mid-air. I think that shift away from the turn-based combat really helps the game feel fresh, you know? Now, the world of Valisthea is stunning. Everywhere you go, the landscapes just pull you in. From vast deserts to lush forests, it's one of those worlds that begs to be explored. I found myself constantly stopping to just take in the view. The towns and cities feel lived into each. One has its own vibe, and I loved talking to NPCs and learning more about the world's lore. Plus, the side quests, they actually have depth. It's not just go fetch this or kill that, but instead, they give you more context about the world and characters, which I always appreciate. I think the only thing that threw me off at first was how different it feels from classic Final Fantasy games. Lords of the Fallen. Now here's a game that has an interesting story, but not in the way you'd expect. Because I'm talking about the story of how the game itself has been received. Lords of the Fallen is one of those games that came out swinging with big ideas, tried some bold moves, and got, well, a lot of hate for it. And honestly, most of it feels a bit unfair. This game came out in the shadow of Dark Souls, and, I mean, it's tough to go toe-to-toe with that. People immediately compared it to From Software's epic series, and fair enough, Lords of the Fallen definitely wears its inspiration on its sleeve. It's got that dark fantasy look, tough-as-nails combat, and a focus on dodging, blocking, and timing your attacks. But here's the thing. Just because it shares a genre doesn't mean it's trying to be a Dark Souls clone. And this is where I think a lot of players missed the point. Where Lords of the Fallen shines is in its own take on the action RPG formula. It doesn't try to be as brutally difficult as Dark Souls. Instead, it aims for more accessibility, which is honestly a great thing. It makes this style of game way more approachable for players who might be new to the genre or just don't have the time to get good through dozens of hours of trial and error. Lords of the Fallen balances challenge with a little more leniency, which is refreshing. The combat itself is actually really satisfying. It's chunky and there's this real weight to every swing of your weapon. It doesn't have the razor-sharp precision of Dark Souls. Cyberpunk 2077. I know it had a rocky start, but seriously, it's a totally different game now after all the updates. The world of Night City is just, wow. I mean, if you love getting lost in a huge, neon-lit, gritty open world, this game is perfect. It feels alive, you know? The city's got this cyberpunk vibe down to a T. Dark alleys, giant holograms, futuristic cars, the whole Blade Runner kind of thing. And honestly, I love how the game doesn't shy away from showing the messier side of that world, like the clash of high-tech and low-life. V, the main character, is super customizable too. I spent way too much time tweaking my character at the start, like more than I'd care to admit. But it's fun to play with all the different builds, whether you want to go full-on hacker, cybernetic brawler, or sneaky assassin. Plus, the augmentations, dude, that's the coolest part. You can literally replace parts of your body with cybernetic enhancements. Who wouldn't want a built-in katana arm or optic implants? What's crazy is how the story can change depending on what you do. Like, the choices really feel like they matter. There was this one mission where I was trying to decide whether to help these corporate types or betray them, and man, I was stressing over it for days. I couldn't stop thinking, what if I made the wrong choice? But that's the fun of it. There's no right or wrong answer, just how you want to play it. I will say the driving can be a little wonky at times, but honestly, once you get used to it, it's not that bad. Plus, the city's so massive, it's fun just cruising around, taking in the sights. Nightingale. Without giving too much away, Nightingale is set in an alternate Victorian-inspired universe where portals connect you to countless magical realms. These aren't just ordinary portals either. Each one opens up a unique, handcrafted world full of surprises. Whether it's dense forests, eerie swamps, or towering mountains, every realm feels like a whole new adventure waiting to happen. At its heart, Nightingale is a survival game. But it's so much more than that. Sure, you'll be gathering resources, crafting tools, and building shelters, but it never feels repetitive or grindy. The game constantly rewards your curiosity. Wander off the beaten path, and you might stumble upon a hidden ruin, a bizarre creature, or a resource you didn't even know existed. You'll face all kinds of strange and otherworldly beings, from towering giants to mischievous fairies. Each encounter feels unique, and sometimes running is just as valid an option as fighting. There's this constant sense of tension and wonder as you explore, never quite knowing what's around the next corner. One of the coolest aspects of the game is the crafting system. It's deep, but not overwhelming, which is a hard balance to strike. You can craft everything from tools and weapons to elaborate structures. And let me tell you, building in this game is a treat. The structures you can create aren't just functional. They're gorgeous. Whether you're putting together a humble cabin or a sprawling Victorian estate, it always feels satisfying and personal. Metro Exodus. This game is something else. If you're into immersive worlds with deep storytelling, this one's going to grab you right from the start. I remember jumping in, and immediately I felt like I was actually there, trudging through the post-apocalyptic Russian wasteland, feeling every bit of that bleak yet oddly beautiful atmosphere. What's really cool about Metro Exodus is how it takes the series from the underground tunnels and opens it up to these massive open areas without losing that signature claustrophobic tension. You still get those tight, nerve-wracking moments where you're creeping through dark, creepy tunnels. But now, you also have these wide-open spaces that make you feel a sense of freedom and danger at the same time. There's something about walking through a desolate, snowy wasteland and then hearing the distant howl of a mutant that gets your heart racing. Artyom's journey is such an emotional one. He's not just trying to survive. He's out there searching for hope, for a place where humanity can rebuild. You can feel how much this means to him and his crew. That bond between them, especially with his wife Anna, really hit me. You're not just a lone wolf. You've got a family, a team that cares for each other, and that gives everything this extra layer of tension. You want to protect them, to keep them safe. You've got to constantly think about how you're using your resources. Do you craft more ammo, or do you focus on a new gas mask filter because the radiation's about to kill you? That balance adds a lot of strategy to the game. Dark Souls Remastered. This game is an undeniable classic, rebuilt to remind players why it's become a benchmark for challenging, rewarding gameplay. It throws you into a grim and mysterious world where every encounter, every decision, and every step feels meaningful. This isn't just a game you play, it's a test of patience, skill, and determination. Combat is at the core of Dark Souls Remastered, and it's an art form here. It's all about timing, precision, and understanding your enemies. Every swing of a sword, every block with your shield, and every dodge roll feels deliberate. The game doesn't hand you easy wins. Instead, it challenges you to learn its rhythms and grow as a player. Defeating an enemy after a tough battle feels like a genuine accomplishment, and that sense of achievement never fades, no matter how many times you experience it. Exploration is another highlight. The interconnected world is full of hidden paths, shortcuts, and secrets that reward players who pay attention to their surroundings. It's not a linear journey, and you're encouraged to venture off the beaten path. Whether you're descending into a dark and eerie cave or ascending a crumbling tower, every area feels distinct and filled with its own challenges. The game's upgrade system is as deep as the world itself. It gives you the freedom to shape your character into the fighter you want to be. Whether you prefer to wield massive swords, master powerful spells, or outmaneuver your enemies with light weapons. Portal 2, one of the smartest, funniest, and most satisfying games out there. I mean, if you've ever wondered what it's like to solve complex puzzles while being gently or not so gently insulted by an AI, this is the game to play. From the moment you wake up, you know you're in for a unique experience. You play as Chell, this silent character stuck in a strange, abandoned science facility, and your main tool is this incredible portal gun. With it, you can create 2 connected portals on certain surfaces, letting you move through them in ways that feel almost magical. The whole concept of thinking with portals is amazing because it forces you to look at puzzles in a totally different way. What I love about Portal 2 is how it gradually ramps up the challenge. At first, it's simple stuff, figuring out where to place portals to get from point A to point B. But then they throw in all these wild mechanics like tractor beams, light bridges, and these crazy gels that speed you up or make you bounce. It's like each level is teaching you to think bigger, get more creative, and really push the limits of what's possible with just portals. The best part, though, has to be the co-op mode. Portal 2 lets you team up with a friend, and it's an absolute blast. You play as 2 adorable robots, and the puzzles are designed around the idea of working together. It's hilarious, challenging, and such a great way to test your teamwork. If you're into smart puzzles, and a game that constantly surprises you, Portal 2 is an absolute must-play. Skyrim. Where do you even start with a game like Skyrim? This game is just huge. It's one of those games that just keeps pulling you in, no matter how many times you've played it before. You boot it up thinking, I'll just play for an hour. And next thing you know, it's 3 a.m. and you're sneaking around in the Thieves Guild or fighting a dragon on top of a mountain. First off, the world. It's absolutely massive and it feels alive, from the snowy peaks of the Throat of the World to the rolling plains of Whiterun. Every part of Skyrim feels like it has its own story to tell. And the fact that you can go anywhere, do anything, it's such a freeing experience. Like, if you see a mountain in the distance, you can actually go there. And you never know what's going to happen along the way. Maybe you run into a giant, or you stumble upon some hidden cave with its own little quest line. It's just endless discovery. The combat, well, it's classic Skyrim. It's not about being super fancy or fast-paced, but it's about choice. You want to swing a giant axe? Go for it. Prefer sneaking around with a bow or dual-wielding daggers? Totally doable. Or maybe you want to go full wizard, summoning flames and raising the dead. Whatever your style, the game lets you play exactly how you want. And speaking of choice, the quests are insane. Sure, there's the main story about you being the Dragonborn with the whole saving the world thing. But honestly, the side quests are where it's at. You can get caught up joining the Dark Brotherhood and becoming an assassin, or leading the companions and becoming a werewolf. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. This game is like a massive playground of imagination. I'll start by saying that if you're a fan of eye-popping visuals, crazy weapons, and charming characters, this is a must-play. Right from the start, you're thrown into this super vibrant animated world. And when I say vibrant, I mean vibrant. The visuals here are insane. It's honestly like playing through a Pixar movie. The combat is chef's kiss. You have this insane arsenal of weapons, and each one is wilder than the last. I mean, only Ratchet and Clank could come up with weapons like a gun that turns enemies into plants. That's right, you can go full botanist on some evil aliens. There's this fun balance where you have to keep switching weapons, and because they're all so unique, combat never feels repetitive. Plus, upgrading them is addicting. You're always excited to see what ridiculous upgrade you'll unlock next. The game somehow keeps you on your toes, thinking, okay, what can I do next to make this even crazier? And let's talk rifts for a second, because they're just so clever. You've got these dimensional portals that let you zip around the battlefield or enter totally new areas in seconds. It's like a whole new way of moving and exploring, and it makes the game feel like nothing else out there. Plus, there's this thrill in zipping through dimensions without a single loading screen. It's a mechanic that's so fresh, it almost feels like you're playing an action movie, where every second keeps you glued to the screen. Rift Apart is perfect for players of all ages. Batman Arkham Knight. If you're into Batman even a little bit, this one really delivers. It's the final entry in the Arkham series, so there's a lot riding on it. And let me tell you, it wraps things up in the most satisfying way. First off, the gameplay. You're not just playing as Batman, you're feeling like Batman. The fluid combat, the way you can string together attacks, counters, gadgets. It's all so smooth. Honestly, once you get the hang of it, you feel like a superhero, effortlessly taking down waves of thugs. It's like the perfect balance of tactical and badass. And then there's Gotham City. I mean, this is the Gotham I've always imagined. The atmosphere is spot on. Rain pouring down, neon lights reflecting off the streets. all with that dark, brooding vibe. It's eerie, but alive, if that makes sense. The city feels like it's its own character. Plus, the freedom to glide through the skyline or hop in the Batmobile just makes you feel like you own the place. Speaking of the Batmobile, I know people have mixed feelings about it, but come on, it's the freaking Batmobile. The controls can be a bit clunky at first, but once you get used to it, it's pretty fun blasting through the streets or shifting into battle mode. It adds a new dimension to the game, especially with those tank battles, even though they can get repetitive after a while. The story is where Arkham Knight really shines for me. Without spoiling too much, it's got everything. A psychological thriller, action-packed moments, and that emotional depth you wouldn't expect from a superhero game. Detroit Become Human. It's one of those games where you're not just watching a story play out, you're actually shaping it. Your choices matter, and I mean really matter. The choices aren't always easy either. Sometimes you're like, what's the right choice here? And there's no clear answer. It's all about what you value, and that affects the relationships you build and the path you take. There's this branching storyline, so the game reacts to your choices in a way that feels organic. Each playthrough can be so different, and it's wild seeing how even small decisions can snowball into something huge later on. You play as 3 different androids, each with their own story, and the game does an amazing job of making you care about each one. You feel invested in their struggles, their choices, and what they want for their lives. The best part for me was the emotional weight. The game digs into some pretty deep themes: freedom, empathy, what it means to be human. And because it's so interactive, it really makes you think about what you do in these situations. By the end, you're not just playing a game, you're reflecting on your own beliefs and choices, which is pretty rare for a video game. And Detroit doesn't shy away from tension either. There are moments where you're genuinely on the edge of your seat, trying to make quick decisions that could totally change everything. And the stakes are high because, things can go wrong in big ways if you make a wrong call. So, yeah, Detroit Become Human is perfect if you're into games that let you dig into a story deeply, and that give you control over what happens. Red Dead Redemption. Even after all these years, it's one of those games that still holds a special place in gaming history. It's more than just a cowboy game. It's a deep, emotional journey set in the fading days of the Wild West. You play as John Marston, a former outlaw, trying to leave his past behind. But of course, it's never that simple. The game's world, story, and characters are all top tier, pulling you into this incredible, open-world experience. The gunplay is smooth, with that satisfying dead-eye system that lets you slow down time and pick off targets with precision. Whether you're involved in epic shootouts or quick-draw duels, the action feels cinematic and intense. But it's not all about combat. You can spend just as much time exploring, engaging in side missions, or even playing mini-games like poker and horseshoes. The story is also a huge draw. John Marston's journey is one of redemption, family, and loyalty, and it's so well written. The characters you meet along the way, from outlaws to lawmen to settlers, are all memorable and feel like they're part of this living, breathing world. You get attached to these characters, and by the end, you're really invested in John's fate. The emotional weight of the story is one of the reasons why this game is still talked about as one of the best. The ending, without spoiling anything, is one of the most impactful and talked about conclusions in gaming. It's the kind of story that sticks with you long after you've finished it. Evil West. If you're into games that let you feel like a total badass while fighting supernatural creatures, this one's for you. It's like Red Dead Redemption meets Van Helsing, but with way more punch. First off, the combat is brutal. You've got this mix of melee and ranged weapons that keeps things interesting the entire time. One moment, you're blasting vampires with a rifle, and the next, you're smashing them into pieces with an electrified gauntlet. The flow of switching between weapons and powers feels so natural. I loved how I never felt stuck using one method. The game just encourages you to get creative with the chaos. The story really surprised me too. I went in expecting just some fun, mindless action, but the narrative actually hooked me. You play as Jesse Rentier, this tough-as-nails cowboy working for a secret monster hunting institute, and the whole Wild West meets horror vibe is so well done. It's not Shakespeare, but it fits the tone perfectly. There's this balance of grit and humor in the dialogue that kept me engaged the whole way through. It doesn't take itself too seriously, but it's not just a throwaway plot either. I also love that they didn't overcomplicate things with RPG elements. There are upgrades, Sure, but they don't slow down the action. You can upgrade your weapons and skills as you go, but it's straightforward and doesn't bog you down with too many choices. It's more about fine-tuning how you want to fight, which really lets you focus on the combat and the carnage.